He was an inspiration, a man who overcame what seemed like improbable odds to live life to the fullest, and even as a pro athlete, in some ways, as a quad amputee. But now, that same man is an accused killer.
Like that second shot a little better, don't you?
And there is a big update in the case of Dayton Webber.
We are here to inform you that on Friday, April 10th, the grand jury did approve an indictment against Dayton James Webber. The charges that they have approved were murder in the first degree. That carries a maximum penalty of life.
Why Webber's attorney, though, is firing back, saying there is much more to this story than just what you've read in the headlines. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. All right, guys, real quick, I need to tell you about this app called Upside, which gets you cash back on everyday purchases like gas, groceries, and takeout. So here's what you do. Download Upside. It's free. Then you claim an offer at one of their 100,000 plus locations. Pay like you normally would with your card. You verify the purchase, and you get money back. So I've used Upside. I use it when I pump gas, or maybe I'm doing takeout. All I do, search for offers first on Upside. Then after I spend, money appears in my app and I transfer it straight to my bank. Upside's frequent users earn an average of $254 back a year. So to start getting cash back, click the link in the description, scan the QR code, and use promo code OTC to get an extra 25 cents bonus on every gallon on your first tank of gas. I want to start with a quote from Dayton Webber himself. And it was a quote that was part of an essay that he wrote in 2023 for the Today Show. He said, quote, "People often underestimate me when they see me, no matter the context," end quote. Now, at the time, he was talking about his life and his journey to becoming one of the top cornhole players in the country. But now you hear that quote, and it almost seems to fit in a darker context.
At the end of the day, we're dealing with a homicide. Someone lost their life. And from that base perspective, our job is to make sure that we put the case together, we prepare the case, and be ready for trial.
That is the Deputy State Attorney for Charles County, Maryland, announcing a grand jury has indicted Dayton Webber on charges including first-degree murder.
What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be showing you how I crank back my crossbow.
So let's talk about Webber, his life story, and how it might have led to what he's now accused of. A 27-year-old from this area south of Washington, D.C., and he has lived most of his life without arms or legs. And even though he had that disability, he really didn't allow it to hold him back. And because of that, he became an inspiration to so many people as he went on to become a professional cornhole player.
What's going on, guys? Dayton Webber here.
Now, Dayton Webber has documented a lot of his life on social media to show people that you can live life to the fullest, even with the limitations you may have and his perceived limitations. I mean, think about going through life without having arms or legs. He was such an inspiration that ESPN did a 6-minute feature on Dayton in 2023. And in that story, his family talks about how when Dayton was 10 months old, he got a bacterial infection that led to sepsis. The situation was so bad, it could have killed him. And in an effort to save his life, they had to amputate his arms and legs. Now look at this video here. That is a gun strapped to Dayton's back, and this is him climbing up into a tree stand while out hunting. He is an avid outdoorsman, and he often posted videos of himself hunting and using bows and firing guns. But cornhole is where Dayton became this national story. He told ESPN that he would compete in dozens of tournaments a month, and in 2023, he got a spot with the American Cornhole League. This is the big time for people who play the game that we often do at barbecues and tailgates. But to Dayton, it was so much more than that. He said that his life motto was, quote, "The world won't wait." But now that award-winning smile, it's been replaced with, frankly, what looks like a grin in his mugshot. And it's chilling when you think of what he is accused of. So let's get into that.
10-4 should be a white sedan, a male was shot in the head. Number 2 male, red shirt.
I want to go back to the night of March 22nd in Charles County.
Someone was shot 52D on 2236.
That's the call that went out over dispatch. The Charles County Sheriff's Office says that deputies were flagged down by two people on the side of a road. It's around 10:25 at night. And the two people tell a terrifying story. They say they were riding in a car that was driven by Webber, and deputies say Webber allegedly got into an argument with the person who was riding shotgun. That man's name was Bradrick Wells. Deputies had two people on the side of the road, but there was no sign of Webber. There was no sign of the white Tesla where all of this allegedly took place. And there was no sign of that person who they say was shot allegedly by Webber.
10-4, should be a white sedan, a male was shot in the head. Number 2 male, red shirt.
I'm about to pull up. 10-3.
Deputies say all four people, though, who were in the car, Webber, Wells, and the two in the back seat, they all knew each other before this. Roughly 2 hours later, after deputies found these people on the side of the road, there was a 911 call that came in from a person who claimed a body had been dumped in their front yard just about 10 minutes from where those two people were on the side of the road. And that body was of Bradrick Wells, a 27-year-old man who is now dead. In the wake of this story and everything that followed it, look at this video. This is video that Webber had posted to his YouTube page, and it's getting a lot of attention, and you can see why. It shows Webber loading and firing a 9mm handgun despite the fact he doesn't have hands. Now, on Saturday night, the witnesses who waved deputies down claimed that they were able to get out of Webber's Tesla when he pulled over to the side of the road after allegedly shooting Wells. And they claimed that Webber allegedly asked them to help dump Wells' body. The two passengers refused, and they say Webber then sped off and allegedly dumped the body down the street. Webber then allegedly took off.
Copy, Dayton Webber, unknown direction of travel.
Look out local for that area. Just definitely believe this to be a shooting area. A suspect that shot the head of the vehicle, which has close injury, is going to be a white Tesla. A white Tesla. When you guys are responding to that area, keep a lookout.
Eventually, Webber was found more than 100 miles away over state lines in Charlottesville, Virginia. Deputies say that Webber was arrested at a hospital where he was being treated for a medical issue, and this is the mugshot that was taken by Virginia authorities. Webber was arrested. He was only charged at first as a fugitive from justice. But this case has gone to an entirely new level because once he returned to Maryland, his case was presented to a grand jury, and that grand jury indicted him on multiple charges, including first-degree murder. Now, the other charges he's facing: firearm during the commission of a violent crime, 2 counts of reckless endangerment, and 2 counts related to having a loaded handgun in a vehicle. Now, if found guilty, Webber could spend the rest of his life in prison. But Webber's attorney says this story, it's not what prosecutors are making it out to be. There's much more to it.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. This is a self-defense case. He was about to be killed. He had to kill or be killed. That's what this case is. It's a self-defense case, and we believe we have the evidence for that. That's going to come out at trial.
Think of that quote there, kill or be killed. That is the story that Webber's defense team is laying out at this point. They spoke to the media, that video per WJLA, after Webber appeared in court. Now, prosecutors, they're pushing back on that. They claim there is no evidence at this point that shows that this was a case of self-defense. The prosecutor was also asked about the impact that social media videos, like the ones showing Webber firing a gun, what role those could play as this case moves forward.
I mean, one of the things that you have to, the trier of fact, whether it be judge or jury, has to understand is it the person physically capable of firing a handgun? And so it may be something that becomes relevant to that discussion. And so we'll have to look at that and make that decision. I mean, one thing that the defense and the state agreed at the bond hearing, as based on comments made by the defense and comments made by the defense before the press, is that this is not a question of who. Both parties agree that Dayton Webber shot Bradrick Wells. As to the why, that's where we're in dispute. But the who, we're not in dispute as to the who. So we'll see based on where that is, whether those videos, any of those videos, need to be admitted into evidence. And of course, any of that will be a discussion whether or not the defense agrees or disagrees, objects or doesn't. That will be a discussion for the court to weigh the evidence and determine if that evidence should be admitted in. But we have to look at all of that and making sure we set up a case appropriately to bring before the trier of fact.
I also thought it was interesting the prosecutor was asked about whether the jail had to make any changes for Webber, considering his disability. This is what she said about that.
I mean, based on the information, again, that we had from law enforcement at the time, as far as even how his own residence was set up, there was nothing unique or special with respect to that. And so we believe that he's fine in the jail. We haven't heard that there are any problems. And then the jail, as the jail indicated, that they would have special accommodations necessary. It's not the first time that the jail has had to make special accommodations for someone. We've had individuals that have been in wheelchairs or other kinds of physical disabilities that required the jail to make sure that they accommodate those things. But again, based on everything that we've seen, that the jail is perfectly able to accommodate him there, as he was able to function throughout his two-story home.
Now, it's unclear when Webber will next appear in court. His case has been moved to circuit court in Charles County, Maryland. The family of Bradrick Wells, they say they're raising money to start an initiative to raise awareness about gun violence in the community. Join us now to break down this case is Eric Faddis, criminal defense attorney. Always great to have you here on Law and Crime. Very unique case here involving Dayton Webber for a lot of reasons. How much does the fact that he has this disability, I mean, he's a quad amputee. I know that's why it's getting a lot of attention, and especially because he had, the social media presence. But when you look at how this case could play out, like how much does that part of it matter?
The disability circumstances alone lend themselves to a self-defense claim. It's just that simple. We have a person who is disabled. They are not, their physical status is not the same as the other party involved in this alleged altercation. And so naturally there are vulnerabilities, there are sensitivities, there are things that this person cannot do. And so does that make them have a more reasonable fear of imminent bodily harm if they believe someone else is threatening them? I think that those circumstances do support a self-defense claim.
Not only is he accused of shooting Bradrick Wells, he was the driver, allegedly, of this Tesla. And he's also accused of dumping his body. And it seems like that's something that they say he did alone, which it's just like, it's hard to picture in your mind how that could actually play out. And then I just think for a potential jury to even explain to them how he might have been able to do it, like as a prosecutor on that side of it, I mean, how do you piece things together and lay out a very, very just incredible story about how this allegedly happened in their eyes?
So the other side of the coin is that Dayton Webber is rather capable. In fact, he's more capable than some other folks. He was, a high-level competitor at a game called cornhole, where you're throwing bags into a hole. On top of that, there are videos of him using a firearm, of him allegedly doing other things that might be crimes. And so, from a prosecutor's standpoint, you've got to sort of educate the jury on what this person can do, what they have done in the past, and what they may have been capable of in this case.
Yeah, because, Dayton Webber's life story is incredible. I mean, he's certainly accused of this terrible crime now, and that's changed things, I think, how people look at him. But it's like you go back, like ESPN did a story on him. He wrote an essay for the Today Show. Like everything about this guy was doing what people would not expect him to do because of his disability. And I just wonder now, from really both sides of it, like, does that work against him? The fact that this is a kid who overcame the odds to do the most amazing things, like, does that flip on him now where he was able to overcome the odds and do allegedly something terrible that you wouldn't expect someone to be able to do like that?
I think the prosecutor is definitely going to say yes. The prosecutor is going to say, hey, look, this is not the type of individual we'd expect as a quadriplegic and in terms of what they're capable of. This person has been capable of greatness, that they've risen to a level in a physical activity such as cornhole that is kind of unparalleled. And on top of that, he can shoot firearms. And so I think the prosecutor is going to say, hey, this is not some, meek, little, vulnerable, scared, fearful person. This is someone who is audacious and someone with that character trait, that's consistent with someone carrying out an alleged crime of this magnitude.
Because then, and I know we're kind of going back and forth between the prosecution and the defense, but I think with this case, it's just like there's kind of like the X's and O's of like, how does, and I'm not trying to dumb it down, but it's like, how is he driving and then able to get out a gun and then shoot somebody, like what prosecutors are saying? Like, from the defense side of it, like, how do you push back on, like, yes, there are videos of him on social media firing a 9mm. There's a video of him climbing up into a tree stand with a gun on his back to go hunting, but still almost be able to say, like, it's still, in the view of the defense, ridiculous to think that he would be able to do all of these things, not to mention allegedly drop a body on his own after he left two people on the side of the road.
Sure. If I'm defense, Chris, what I might do is something like ask the jury during voir dire, hey, can you, make a phone call without using your arms or legs? Think about how difficult just normal daily activities would be for someone who is a quadriplegic. Think about the disadvantage that they might be contending with in literally every second of their day. And so, the fact that that could make a person vulnerable, that could make a person less capable of serious aggressive violence, and in fact is more consistent with someone who might have been just desperately trying to protect themselves under the circumstances while still contending with those disadvantages.
Yeah, and there's still so much that we don't know. I know police have said that the four people, you have Bradrick Wells, Dayton Webber, and then the two people who are the witnesses in this, that they all knew each other beforehand. It's unclear exactly what the relationship was like, but taking the part about Dayton Webber's disabilities out of it, it seems like you're going to have two witnesses who didn't want any, their story is they didn't want anything to do. Like, they got out of the car. They're not helping dump a body. They're getting out of there. And if you're a defense attorney and maybe, we don't know what happened inside the vehicle, but those two people do, whether they tell the truth or not, we don't know. But like, how do you, if it's 2-on-1 and Bradrick Wells isn't here to say what happened, like, as the defense, like, how do you create that environment to push back on what we believe could be a story being told by these two witnesses saying that Dayton Webber allegedly did this?
What those two surviving witnesses from that vehicle say is going to be absolutely critical. We're talking about eyewitnesses who were, proximal to this shooting, very close, within a matter of feet. If I'm defense, I'm going to inquire about, hey, could these people really see what was happening from the back seat? That there are seats in front of them. There might be a center console. Their view like? Was it obstructed in any way? Could they have been mistaken in terms of what they viewed? There's also going to be questions about what they heard, not only what they saw, but what they heard. Were there any threats either direction? If the decedent had made some sort of credible threat on Dayton Webber's life, that could certainly support a self-defense claim. And so you've got to look at their the passenger's vantage, what they heard, and also whether they have any bias. What is their connection to this decedent? Are they better buddies with him? All of these questions matter.
If you're the defense, do you want the videos and kind of his story of being this, person who overcame the odds? Like, in some ways I could see that being a very sympathetic figure. Like, this is a kid who had to overcome everything in life to get to where he is. At the same time, you play the video of him shooting a 9mm, and suddenly for a juror, they may think in their head, well, that's kind of what it would look like and how he's able to handle it on his own. Like, if you're the defense, how do you handle the possibility of those videos being in? Can you get those videos not, get them thrown out ahead of a trial?
A few things. As defense, I don't think you can sidestep or downplay or minimize the disabilities that your client has, especially when they're so prominent on a national stage like this. When it comes to the videos themselves, if I'm defense counsel, I'm moving to restrict all videos that show the client discharging a firearm. I think that under what's called Rule 403, the probative value of that, the relevance of it, is substantially outweighed by the concern of unfair prejudice, by the concern that the jury is going to view this and say, oh my gosh, this is a guy shooting a gun, and this case is about a guy shooting a gun. You sort of begin to conflate all of those events and weave a story in the juror's head from the prosecution standpoint. So if I'm defense, I'm trying to get those kicked out, or at least limited to only one video, as opposed to the many that I've seen circulating around the internet.
The other part of it too, like I think with, the self-defense part of it is he was found 100 miles away in Charlottesville, Virginia. Like, there are hospitals, and if he was injured, there's, I could see someone argue There's a hospital in Charles County, Maryland. You know, you could have called if it's self-defense. Why not stay at the scene? Why not call 911? What do you make of that fact that will come into it, that he not only left, he went a pretty good ways away from, all of this that took place?
Prosecutor's going to say that's consciousness of guilt. This is a guy who knew he had done wrong, and now he's trying to evade. Now he's trying to flee. He's trying to run away from this event. But, on the defense side, if I'm defense, I'm saying, hey, look, this was a terribly traumatic event for this young man who is severely disabled. Not everyone is thinking rationally in those situations. Not everyone knows what to do. And if a person acted lawfully under self-defense and the decedent was already dead and had no chance of being revived, then I don't think there's a law requiring the defendant to, call police and say, hey, I shot this guy. But certainly the jury's going to look at these circumstances post-shooting and say, that raises a few eyebrows.
When it comes to the grand jury indictment, I mean, first-degree murder, and then he has some weapons charges underneath it. Like, for prosecutors, just with how that plays out, like, clearly the first-degree murder part of it is huge, but how do those lesser charges kind of factor into how this could play out?
My apprehension, Chris, and the details on the facts of what happened are rather limited publicly. They haven't been fully disclosed. But my apprehension is that if this was self-defense, if it was, self-defense would likely be applicable to most or all of those charges, because we're talking about one singular act. We're talking about the shooting within a vehicle. If that shooting was self-defense, then self-defense arguably is a defense to reckless endangerment as well, which is another one of the charges likely based on discharging a firearm within a vehicle with multiple people. And so it could be a defense across the board. It could completely absolve a Dayton Webber of any wrongdoing if the jury agrees that it is self-defense.
And we'll see what happens next. I mean, just, allegedly, if this is what happened, what a fall from grace, for somebody who overcame so much in his life. Eric Faddis, criminal defense attorney. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Good to be with you.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. And we're also now streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.